In this situation, one person in the 19th century became more and more essential to me, Franz Liszt. He not only is one of the greatest composers in the 19th century, but he was also one of the greatest and most distinctive performers in the 19th century. Other than theories around the metronome and its application, Liszt represents an actual performance practice in the 19th century, a practice that is accessible directly via a whole bunch of documents, testimonials by his pupils, statements he gave himself, and numerous reviews of his concerts both as a pianist and as a conductor. With all these sources, I had, as we say in German, solid floor beneath my feet. I discovered then that the aspect of slowness indeed played not too small a part in Liszt's art of interpretation, something one might not necessarily expect from the cliché of a concert virtuoso like Liszt. The key work for me was Liszt's great fantasy and fugue on Ad nos ad salutarem undam for organ. This work was discussed widely and very prominently during the 19th century, and it undoubtedly shows a performance practice that is stunning in its radical slowness, even for me, who was already interested in the subject. There are no metronome markings for the Ad nos fantasy, but an actual duration that was reported 4 times in the 19th century, a quite unique situation for music history. I presented the rich collection of sources and documents on that work in my book on the Ad nos fantasy that came out in 2021. I also showed in this book that the performance practice resulting from historical sources about the Ad nos fantasy was not a singular phenomenon, but was related to general statements by Liszt himself, as well as, for instance, by Richard Wagner, Liszt's comrade in arms in terms of modern music in the 19th century. I also presented a recording of that work, the first recording ever, as far as I know, that would represent the original duration of the Ad nos fantasy. Starting with Ad nos, Liszt became more and more important, both in my research and interpretation. I presented another work for which Liszt himself named a duration, Beethoven's great Hammerklavier Sonata in B-flat major, opus 106. This work took an exceptional place in Liszt's repertoire, as he was the first pianist ever to perform it publicly. Liszt's duration now is more than 20 minutes longer than the duration resulting from Beethoven's own metronome markings. Durations like that are noticeably longer than the durations we hear in most performances today. It is natural, as a result, that they create a different aesthetic compared to what we are used to today. That different aesthetic was the main focus on the other parts of the A-Tempo project. These parts include 3 more Beethoven sonatas in Volume 7, a sonata by Schubert in Volume 8, Liszt's second book of the Année de Pèlerinage in Volume 5, and now, as some sort of summit, Liszt's sonata in B minor in Volume 9.